my life experiences line up for the challenges we face today in Florida.
The race is on. Candidates for governor already are stumping on this Labor Day weekend. Democrat Gwen Graham is live with us today.
This is the only country we call our homes.
D-Day for dreamers. The president is poised to decide the fate of hundreds of thousands of people brought to the U.S. illegally as children.
Living on a street named after him is like being asked to live on Hitler Street.
Signs of the times. Streets in Hollywood named for Confederate generals are about to change. We will take it to the roundtable.
Good morning. Labor Day may mark the official end to summer, but those who want to be your next Florida governor have already jump-started the campaign.
Boy, have they ever. Yes, we know it's a year before the primary, but the candidates already are out there running full tilt. We're going to talk to one of them, Gwen Graham, in just a minute. First, though, we want to bring you the very latest on Hurricane Irma. In
fact, the 11 a.m. advisory from the National Hurricane Center is just out, and Weather Authority meteorologist Jennifer Correa is here with what it says. Jen, take it away.
Hi, Glenna. Hi, Michael. Well, here's a satellite imagery of Hurricane Irma, still a Category 3, which is a major hurricane, maximum sustained winds at 115 miles per hour. So as of 11 a.m., getting closer to the Leeward Islands, less than 900 miles east of those islands. And here's a look at the forecast cone. You can see the Leeward Islands, Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, and also the southern Bahamas, Turks and Caicos underneath the cone. Now, Irma is going to become a Category 4 as early as tomorrow, if not by very early on Tuesday. As of now, Irma continues to track towards the west-southwest because of a building ridge to the north, nudging it towards the south, but Irma will turn towards the west and then west-northwest tomorrow through Tuesday. And that track will continue west-northwest until it gets a little closer to Florida, but a mid-level low could arrive just in time with a trough of low pressure that will grab Irma and turn it towards the north. And here are the two reliable models, European Global, the U.S. Global model in white, European in orange. They are in agreement. Now the U.S. agreeing even more with the European since yesterday, still at a faster pace, but notice they're both turning towards the north. So that trough could potentially grab Irma, make that turn towards the north by Sunday, but still Florida will have a few impacts. Still too early to call those specifics, but of course this is the time to just work out a plan. And of course, stay tuned to your Weather Authority. Michael.
Jennifer, thanks so much. All right, on now to the race for governor. This week, the three Democratic candidates who are formally in the race made their first joint appearance. It was before the Foreign Club of the Palm Beaches. The candidates are Andrew Gillum, currently the mayor of Tallahassee, Chris King, a businessman from Orlando who has already been a guest on our program,
and Gwen Graham, who is right here with us in the studio today, former Congresswoman who represented Florida's Panhandle, and before that, a school administrator in Tallahassee. Graham comes to the race with instant name recognition for so many as the daughter of former Governor and Senator Bob Graham. Good morning.
Congresswoman.
Good morning.
So great to have you come in. All right, let's begin with the most basic question. Why are you running for governor, and why are you the best candidate?
Well, first, thank you for having me on this morning, and thank you for the update on Irma. For 20 years, we've had a monopoly in Tallahassee, and as a result, our state, on many of the issues that we care about, going in the wrong direction. Public education, our environment, our economy, these are all areas that I know Floridians need to have a governor that will fight for them, and that's what I'm committed to doing.
You know, we saw a little bit of video from the forum Monday night in Palm Beach. That was really the first time the candidates who have announced so far for the Democratic primary have been together. And it was a little bit of, I guess a lot of people are calling it a love fest. Everybody loves each other, and there's not much daylight in between on a lot of the issues. And so how do you go about differentiating yourself from especially Andrew Gillum, who is a very popular Tallahassee mayor at the moment, and Chris King, and possibly some other people who are going to be jumping in the race who we'll talk about?
Well, as someone who never expected that I was going to run for office.
Oh, is that right?
I never thought I was going to run for office. And so I come to this with a life experience of working in the public schools, of working for our environment, and someone that from one end of Florida to the other, it is such an amazing experience, Glenna, to feel the connection that I have with Floridians all across this state. And I can't wait to be a governor that wakes up every day and works hard for them. That's what I'm committed to doing.
Congresswoman, let's look at education. This has been one of your great passions, one of your father's great passions as well. A certain percentage, I don't know, maybe it's like 8% of schools in Florida now are charter schools. They are part of the public school districts. They're chartered by their local school district, and they get the same per pupil funding for operational costs. They're getting capital costs now as well. When it comes to charter schools, do you favor them? Do you think that they are needed?
My focus is on restoring our public education system. I am a proud graduate of public schools. All my kids went to public schools. For the last 20 years, we have been on a path to establish what is in Tallahassee now an education industry, where the corporate testing companies are making money in bucket loads, where the charter schools, for-profit charter schools, are siphoning money away for a for-profit industry. My commitment is to return our public schools to a place where kids can get up every day and have a joy of learning, in the high-stakes testing, in the grading of our schools. You know, Michael, it's not grading, it's degrading. I did a work day at a public school in South Florida, at Miami Gardens, Carroll City. I had a young man come up to me and say, "Miss Gwen, I have been at a D or an F school my whole life. I'm not a D or an F kid. I want to do great things with my life."
So this connotation, excuse me, the legislators who enacted this, I think it began actually with Jeb Bush, are saying we have to grade these schools to see how they are comparing to each other. Let's create a fair system. I mean, is this grading? Why is it degrading?
It's not a fair system. It's a false argument. Because what has happened over the last 20 years is that those schools that have more challenges have had resources stripped away from them. We need to be providing those schools as many resources as any other school in the state of Florida, and give them a chance to give that young man that I went to school with, that I was able to get to know and on a personal level, the same opportunities as any other kid in this state. And as governor, that's what I'm going to do.
And then how then, though, when and if that ever happens in a different kind of philosophy and practice, how do you know, how do you measure success?
There are plenty of ways to measure success, Glenna. I mean, I went to public schools. I remember taking a test at the beginning of the school year and at the end of the school year to see if I had growth. And hopefully I did. So there are ways that we used to use to measure whether our kids were succeeding. We should not be straddling our teachers with the culture of having to get up every day and teach to the test. There is so much more to education. And I look forward to being a governor that gets us back to that, gets us back to recognizing that we can provide our kids the greatest education opportunities by instilling in them a joy of learning that sadly has ceased to exist in our schools.
This is not, specifically a Florida issue, except there are 50,000 maybe DACA kids in Florida, maybe 30,000 in South Florida. The president says on Tuesday he's going to decide if he will rescind DACA for these dreamers or keep it. It looks to me like he's probably going to phase it out. Should it be kept? Should Congress move in, step in?
It should absolutely be kept. I mean, where has the humanity gone in the decisions that we make as a government? These young people came here, they were for no fault of their own. They are wonderful participants in our society. They are young people that deserve to be given an opportunity. And I think this discussion needs to take place in the bigger discussion of immigration reform. Mm-hmm. And we absolutely need to address immigration reform in Congress. I hope that this will be the start of preserving DACA, because it's the right thing to do, but also finally getting down to the hard work that Congress should be doing addressing immigration reform needs.
Well, as long as we're talking about Congress, your congressional tenure, you won a seat in a panhandle district that's GOP leaning. When you ran for Congress in 2014 against Stephen Sutherland, you were campaigning on a conservative Democrat stance. I think that's what you called yourself, a conservative Democrat, which there probably played really well. Across the state in a Democratic primary, would you still call yourself a conservative Democrat?
I call myself a Floridian. And the decisions that I will make for Florida will be ones that will help all Floridians succeed. So that's what I'm committed to doing as governor. And again, so excited as I travel the state to feel that excitement and connection. And yes, you mentioned love, because it's a wonderful opportunity to be a governor again that people can feel proud of and excited about and know that every day I'm going to wake up and work hard for them.
When you voted certain ways in your tenure in Congress, you voted for the Keystone Pipeline, you voted to dismantle some of the regulations on Wall Street. Is that's going to be something that your opponents point to differentiate them from you in the Democratic primary? And what do you tell voters about those votes that I'm guessing you were proud of at the time and you stand behind?
You're right. I am proud of my votes in Congress, and I would ask people to look at my whole record. But you know what the best thing about being in Congress was? My ability to help people back home. I returned $2.5 million to the people in North Florida that deserve to have those resources in their pockets. And at the same time, I cut my operating budget by almost 15%. I returned almost 15% to the U.S. Treasury. So I've proven that you can do a great job working hard and still be efficient with taxpayers' dollars, and I think that's very important.
You also had a record of bipartisanship working across the aisle on a number of issues. Congresswoman, let me quote a piece in the Tampa Bay Times. Adam Smith, a very influential political writer, did a profile of you the other day, and he had a number of things to say. If we can, we put this up on the screen. Here's what Adam wrote. She may be the front runner, but the race is far from over. She is not a candidate prone to gaffes or having to walk back comments, but her feel-good bromides can make her sound like just another cautious politician.
Where is the love there?
I know. Look, Adam spent several days with me, and we had a good time together. I appreciate anyone says that I have feel-good bromides. I'll take that.
Did you see this FAU poll that's just out? What's really interesting, and we don't have a graphic to put up, but I think what's interesting about this FAU poll is that, first of all, 47% of Democrats polled say they're undecided. But the front runner is actually someone who's not in the race yet. John Morgan, the Orlando attorney, I guess best known across the state because he backed the medical marijuana amendment. But if he gets into the race, if he decides to, is that a game changer at all for you?
You know, John and I are good friends, and I would never, I have learned a lot in my life. One of the things I've learned is never predict what John Morgan's going to do. So we will wait and see, but I will continue to run the race that I'm so proud of and continue to work across the state of Florida doing my work days. I'm going to do a work day on Tuesday at a addiction recovery facility in Boca talking about the opioid crisis. So these are things that I'm committed to doing to connect and to learn about the real issues that Floridians are facing so that when I'm governor, I can be the best governor for them.
One of the issues Floridians have been debating is what to do with Confederate statues and memorials in the city of Hollywood. You may have been following this. The names of 3 streets named for Confederate generals are now going to be changed. There is a memorial on the grounds of the old Capitol in Tallahassee to Confederate soldiers. What should happen to that?
I believe it's time to remove the Confederate monuments and place them in appropriate places such as museums, historical locations, and textbooks. But the bigger question, I don't want to take our eyes off of the bigger question, which is we need to do something about the hatred and the divisions in our country that we saw in Charlottesville. You know, I think we as a country are better than that, and we need to come together. I very much disagreed with the president's comments. You know, there are not 2 sides. There is only one side on this issue. I don't want, as much as we do need to remove those Confederate monuments and move them to appropriate places, let's not let the conversation end after that.
One quick last question. Your dad is such a political icon in the state. You do his work days, you carry on the tradition. Is there sort of something about the whole thing that says, how do I become Gwen Graham instead of Bob Graham's daughter? Because obviously you are your own capable woman individually.
Well, thank you for mentioning my father. I love him very much. I'm very proud of him. So yes, I am Gwen Graham. I stand on my own 2 feet. But I'll tell you what, the example of public service that my father represents, I am proud to carry on that. And I hope all people who are running for office would do the same.
I'd like to point out you're also Adele Graham's daughter. I happen to be a huge admirer of your mother as well. She is a fabulous person.
I thank you for that as well. She is a center of our family of love and support, and my father and my mother are certainly a team. So thank you for recognizing her.
Okay, Gwen Graham, great to have you come in.
Thank you. It was wonderful.
See you come back, maybe with Adam Putnam down the road. Who knows?
Be happy to.
Look forward to seeing you back.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
In about 48 hours, President Trump is said to announce his decision on DACA, and so much is riding on that for hundreds of thousands of young people known as Dreamers.
And so what does it mean to them and everyone else in South Florida? We will have an expert immigration attorney with us next. Some 800,000 young people across the country and about 33,000 in South Florida now are bracing for President Trump's decision on Tuesday on whether he's going to keep or revoke DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals policy.
5 years ago, President Obama signed the executive order giving reprieve to young people brought to the U.S. illegally as children by their parents. And it also paved the way for them to study and work in the only country they know as home. The decision could be one of the president's toughest yet. Linda Osberg-Braun is a veteran immigration attorney in South Florida who has also been counsel for the U.S. Immigration Service and a federal public defender. Great to have you and your perspective here this morning.
Good morning.
Linda, great to have you here. All right, so these 10 attorneys general, led by the Attorney General of Texas, have said if by Tuesday, September 5th, the president has not rescinded DACA, they are going to sue. They say that this is unconstitutional. Just from your point of view as an expert in immigration law, is DACA unconstitutional?
Absolutely not. It's not unconstitutional. But the lawsuit in Texas has prompted this. Why they picked this issue to test the presidential power is beyond me. However, they're claiming that the President Obama overstepped his boundary as the president, where this is clearly Congress's prerogative to create laws. So we've had 5 years for Congress to create the law, and now they're threatening on September 5th when the injunction ends, they're threatening now to include DACA into that lawsuit.
And this really, of all of the president's decisions that he's had to make in the past couple of weeks, is among the toughest simply because he himself on the campaign trail almost exactly a year ago today, one of the first things he's going to do is end DACA. But then, as president, he told ABC's David Muro in January that they have nothing to worry about. These kids know, but they're worried, are they not? Because this is very real this week.
They're worried, and they should be. With all the hints that the president has made, I have a big heart. The DACAs, the Dreamers should not worry. What I read that to be is an unfolding of making DACA the president's crusade, and making it turn into a time frame for Congress to act on the single issue, because immigration reform would be too complicated to get passed at this point. And hopefully it's another way to force Congress to act, to give the Dreamers what they deserve.
Well, you know what really is hard to wrap your head around? I mean, illegal immigration is such a flashpoint right now. These kids technically are illegal immigrants, but they are not by their own choice illegal immigrants and are Americans in every other way. So, but aside from the humanitarian aspects of it, is it not common sense, because of the investment that the United States has made in these children, be it public schools or training, and now they have work permits and they're contributing, isn't it an investment issue?
Absolutely, it's an investment, and now it's an 800,000 person investment. These young kids, now young men and women, have grown. They're vetted. They're not the criminals, they're not the gangs. So let's not confuse the two issues. And a lot of the TV rhetoric is confusing the issues. These young, now men and women are hardworking, productive members of our society, contributing to this society. They're working, they're paying into our tax base, they're buying cars, some of them are buying houses. And some of them are too young now to have reached that level, and too young to have even applied, because you have to be 15 years old to apply. Right. So we've got a bundle of kids who are going to be caught in between the two if the rug is taken out from under them tomorrow.
Linda, we have less than a minute left, but let me ask you, some immigration advocacy experts are predicting that the president may say something like, well, I do love the Dreamers, and we're going to phase this out over a couple of years. That would just really sort of prolong the agony, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. The answer is in congressional reform, I agree. But the president can continue DACA, and if the lawsuit were to win, the president has many other alternatives to help the already vetted and qualified Dreamers, and that could be through prosecutorial discretion, because we have limited resources. So why shouldn't the president say, I'm going to use my resources to go after this group of people and not this group, and not as the Dreamers?
Of course, he's got an attorney general who thinks that that DACA is unconstitutional and doesn't want to defend those kids.
Well, you must. Again, like the previous segment, this is an issue of what our country is all about. This is an issue of who we are, and there is always a way to help those that deserve it in the United States. It's called DACA, or we could call it prosecutorial discretion. Whatever we call it, we must help these young children.
We will see on Tuesday. Linda Osberg-Braun, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for coming in. Always a pleasure. All right, Venezuela's new Constituent Assembly is demanding a probe and a trial of traitors. We're going to have a live report from Caracas coming up. This week, Venezuela's new Constituent Assembly voted to put its opposition leaders on trial for treason.
The first signs of that may have come this weekend as the wife of Venezuela's most prominent activist, Leopoldo Lopez, was suddenly barred from leaving the country. Let's get right to our colleague in Caracas. Cody Weddle is there with the latest developments. Cody, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you guys. The government last week found 200 million bolívares, which roughly works out to about $12,000 in the car of Lilian Tintori. Now, she is the wife of one of the top opposition leaders here, Leopoldo Lopez. She so far has said that money was to be used for her 100-year-old grandmother and her expenses. But the government so far has called her for legal questioning. They have also banned her from leaving the country, as you said. And all of this happening as the protests this week obviously have fizzled. The opposition has turned its focus to those regional elections scheduled for October 10th. Primaries are actually scheduled for those elections next week. Also, many people just don't see the point in continuing the protests as the government was successful in installing that constitutional assembly. So for now, certainly a sigh of relief for President Nicolas Maduro, but it's a sigh of relief that won't last long as the government continues in a cash crunch here. According to a Reuters report, they have $2 billion to cover $1.6 billion in payments this year. So that means that the humanitarian crisis here will actually worsen as the government doesn't have the money to import basic foods and basic medicines. Combine that with the new sanctions from the U.S., and many people are talking about the possibility of a default on Venezuelan debt. So far, President Maduro has said that they have no intention of going into default, but after those sanctions, he has said they are intended to push Venezuela into default. And many analysts are saying, if not this year, then certainly next year, we could see a situation where Venezuela cannot honor its payments.
Cody, the New York Times this morning has a big full-page article and a photograph, a big photograph. It shows a woman standing in the aisle of a supermarket in Caracas in front of a freezer case and shelves, and there's nothing there, absolutely nothing. Is that what you encounter if you go to a supermarket there?
Well, many times what you will see if you go to a supermarket, if you were to come here, you might be surprised because you'll say, actually, there's plenty of stuff on the shelves. There's plenty of stuff in the freezers. But then when you start to look for specific items, let's say you want to get rice, you'll start looking for rice in the supermarket. You won't find it. Or maybe you'll start looking for eggs. I just yesterday went to the grocery store looking for eggs, and they don't have those. That's because those items are regulated, and the people who produce them say they can't make a profit at the regulated prices that the government makes them sell them at, so they just don't sell them. So in some cases, you'll see shelves just with one product, or maybe just detergent, or maybe just ketchup. But sometimes the shelves are empty as well, as they just don't have enough of those regulated products to stock the shelves.
Yet another sign of that spiraling economy. Cody, so good to have you there. Thank you for being with us this morning. And up next, we are going to take it all to the roundtable. Stay with us.
All right, we want to take a deeper dive now into the week's top news stories with our Powerhouse Roundtable.
And it is a Powerhouse Roundtable today. For some introductions, Mark Caputo is the Florida correspondent for Politico and author of the daily Politico Florida Playbook. Nancy Ankrum, editorial page editor at the Miami Herald, and Ed Pizzoli, president of the Tripp Scott Law Firm in Fort Lauderdale, and also an active voice in the Republican Party locally and in Washington.
An all-star cast, I've got to say. Nancy, I know that your page has editorialized about Dreamers the other day, wrote a fine editorial. What do you think the president's going to do on Tuesday?
I think that the president's going to wiggle out of this one. I think he's, one, very aware of the optics, or has been made aware of the optics of putting productive, young, photogenic people in such jeopardy, and just the lack of humanity that would really mean, punishing people who really, through no fault of their own, are here. So I really am convinced that he's going to find something other than just a phase out, which would still leave a lot of them in jeopardy.
Sure would. Sure would.
What was interesting this weekend, Friday, I believe, is Governor Scott actually came out, who has been in lockstep with the president on almost every issue, came out and advocated for a reprieve for these dreamers. That's how I read it anyway.
Yes, me too.
Ed, is there any logical reason not to extend DACA or some facsimile thereof to these young people?
In my mind, no. There's no reason to not extend those who are already here, grandfather them in for a period of time, and then charge Congress to get some law in place that deals with this, rather than doing it through executive order, which in my view as a lawyer is unconstitutional. On the other hand, the question is, do you continue the program for those who are waiting to come into the United States? And I think that truly should be stopped. We put people in jeopardy when we subject children and their families to try to smuggle them in through Central America and to the United States. We put them in true jeopardy. We kind of offer up a carrot that shouldn't be there. We should take that carrot away and stop the program. But on the other hand, those who are here, I think we've got to figure out.
But DACA is different. DACA is specifically for people who have been here since 2012, who were 16 years old by that date.
I think you're going to see, the DACA piece of it, I think you're going to see, hopefully you'll see some reprieve on that side of it. But I do think they're going to clamp down on the other side, because he's got to, politically speaking, I think he has to do these things in tandem.
Yeah. Mark, the Congress has shown it had no appetite for comprehensive immigration reform, or even kind of middling immigration reform. Do you think that they can at least pass a bill that would affect the Dreamers, give them protection?
Well, they can, will they? I don't think so. You're asking do-nothings to do something, something that's controversial. And they've been unable to kind of do that. Remember, they've talked about, okay, we can't do comprehensive immigration reform, let's do it piecemeal.
Yeah.
Well, here's a piece, and almost everyone agrees on it, and yet they've done nothing. I don't want to disagree with Nancy too much, but I think we don't know what Trump's going to do. That's kind of what makes him fascinating to cover as a president. But remember, Donald Trump early on, before he was a presidential candidate, spoke very positively about Dreamers.
Yeah.
But Donald Trump, the presidential candidate, kind of really didn't. And so those two Donald Trumps, I think, are conflicting with each other.
Well, he was ambivalent on Friday. He said, we love the Dream, but we love everyone,
Yeah, well, and we love rhetoric. But I think the thing that we have to remember is that Donald Trump, the president, also campaigned as a hardliner, and there's a general game theory that this president approaches policy with. If Obama chooses A, I choose to repeal A.
But that's why he's got to come out with the other half of it. So if in my view, he should go ahead and extend the Dreamers. That would be my view. But on the other hand, he's got to come out again with a second layer of that says we're got to stop any more of this. And he's got to put some meat around that, and then he's got to look. He also gains a lot of favor when he attacks Congress, even if it's the Republican Congress. So he's going to put the onus back on Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan said late last week that this is an issue that Congress should deal with. And so if he takes it up and brings it to the House, that's the toughest part, getting it through the House.
You know, I mean, this is also an opportunity for the Republicans to look pretty good in terms of immigration and immigration advocacy. I mean, yes, you do see Scott coming forward for it. Of course, you know, dinging Obama, well, he shouldn't have done it, but since he's done it, you know, it's like, okay. Paul Ryan and others, I think they are signaling, you know, we can no longer afford to alienate every last Hispanic immigrant in the country.
I also think it's the right thing to do. So you see Carlos Carbello, Marco Rubio, Leona Ross Layton, all side with the Dreamers, and I think it's the right thing to do, particularly for our community.
There's another component of this in that this is a group of people, the DACA recipients, who have registered with the government. So whatever happens Tuesday, the government has a record of who is who and where they live and how old they are and what they're doing. Right. And that has to put fear into the hearts of those people.
They had to register.
Because one of the, as you know, Mark, one of the things about illegal immigration, one of the issues is, do they go into the shadows and then no one knows who they are or where they are? And of course, the humanitarian effects for them not to be able to come out and if they're hurt or in fear. And so, I mean, what happens Tuesday to them?
That's a great question. I think that this would take as a whole a great betrayal by our government if we told these people, hey, come and register, trust us. You know, how do you say screw you in Washington? Trust me. And that looks like it might happen.
Yeah. I would recommend, if anybody at home would like to read, I think a really thoughtful essay and op-ed about this, a column. Brett Stevens in the New York Times yesterday had a fabulous column saying this is what America, he's a very conservative columnist, we need to protect these kids. And
goes back to the right thing to do. I think in this instance it is the right thing to do. But I'll also say this, going back to do nothing Congress. Look, the Democrats had an opportunity to deal with this issue when they controlled Congress. Republicans have the opportunity, and I'm urging, in my view, I would urge the Republican Congress and the leadership to get on with it, and let's fix this problem.
Yeah. Well, and let's also note that Congressman Carlos Carbello is a sponsor of the RACA Act. I mean, he has taken steps to try to provide protections, but that bill thus far has not gone very far.
And how does that differ from the Senate version that Lindsey Graham has floated?
I don't think it differs significantly. The main thing is as we've been talking about here, the problem is the House. And I think the problem with the Democrats in 2009 and 2010 when they had control of the House and the Senate is they thought, hey, there might be good politics here. Let's push it a little later. This is going to help us out. Whereas the Republicans are like, oh, there's significant portions of our base that just don't like this. That's partly a legacy in other states of gerrymandering, where Republican districts have so few Hispanic members of the district that the politics are just not there for them.
Right. All right, everybody, excuse me, hold your thoughts for a minute. We're going to come back, talk about the governor's race. Yeah, we know it's a long way off, but we just heard from Gwen Graham. We'll be back and talk about who's running for governor in just a minute.
We are back with the roundtable. Ed Pozzoli, Nancy Angro, Mark Caputo. What is so funny? I don't know, but we're going to find this out. You know, the governor's race, Gwen Graham was here. We had Chris King on this program, Andrew Gillum, hopefully very soon. The three Democratic announced candidates, Mark, they all agree on almost everything so far.
Well, you know, welcome to party primaries.
What's a voter to think?
I don't know yet, and people, we're paying attention, but most people aren't. Right. And talk to me in 6 months or so. The real elephant in the room here, pun intended, is going to be Donald Trump. You know, presidents, parties generally suffer in a midterm. However, historically in Florida, the midterm elections have just been bloodbaths for Democrats. So we're going to see which one outweighs the other.
Right, and we have seen, as Gwen Graham said, 20 years of Republican dominance in Tallahassee. Ed,
It's a great place to live.
It's a lovely community. And Gwen Graham, here's my question to you. Gwen Graham comes from a political dynasty. Donald Trump taught us that voters aren't very taken these days with political dynasties, but I'm just thinking, because Bob Graham is such a respected figure, the Graham name has got to help her.
Okay. With you, it does. But I'm not so sure most voters know whoever voted for Bob Graham. They may like him. And transferring that kind of goodwill, to the degree he has goodwill, to his daughter, who is essentially a one-term congressman from the north part of the state, I don't know. I think she needs to be a candidate and be her own person. She needs to be her own candidate. Now, if she's going to get driven to the left by party politics, primary politics, and she's going to suffer a similar fate than what we saw, say, with Charlie Crist, who also moved to the left trying to prove his Democratic way.
As Glenna pointed out in the conversation, she got elected in the Panhandle by being a center-right Democrat.
Yeah, but she's not running as a center-right Democrat now. She's running as probably to the right of certainly Andrew Gillum, but not very right at all. She's not running from a centrist position, at least right now. Now, most people aren't paying attention, and so I think all that's going to be, she is a quality person with some quality ideas, and so I don't think anybody who takes her for granted is doing a disservice.
You know, I think Ed is right. Oh, I said that. I think Ed is right. She is really going to have to become her own person. I don't think the Graham name resonates among, we're talking 20 years now, 30 years now?
No, we're talking 20 years.
It resonates, it will resonate against, with people of a certain age.
Yeah,
people
older people like me.
That's what I was trying, you know, and
trying to be nice.
people who definitely are voters. But after that, I think all bets are off.
Can I tell you, I saw evidence of that last night. I was at a gathering last night with many attorneys, crowd 30, 40, 50. A lot of people there did not know who Gwen Graham was. People who are engaged in issues in our community, and I was surprised.
Right, the last time Bob Graham appeared on the ballot was 1998. Right. So a child born then is 19 today, and will be 20 next year. Yeah, well, presumably. It is Florida, though. So
you know, to briefly look on the other side of the ledger, I am on, as you are, as we all are, the email list of all the candidates. And Adam Putnam, the state agriculture commissioner, former member of Congress, very attractive candidate, but boy, he is just going out of his way to move to the right, I guess, to counter Richard Corcoran or anybody else who wants to run. I mean, I got an email from him yesterday that said, we've got to stop these liberals who are giving George Soros and Jane Fonda are giving money to defeat me. You've got to give me money instead.
Was that the tone of the email?
It was.
Should have come with an audio file. But I mean, these are party primaries, and that's kind of what you. Did he actually say Jane Fonda?
Really? He did.
He is Jane Fonda.
She's older than all of us.
That's the headline.
You saw that too, Ed?
Who the hell is Jane Fonda? Right? But you know, these are just party primaries. You're going to see the Democrats are going to move left, and the Republicans are going to move right. The one interesting exception to this right now appears to be Jack Ladval, the state Senate budget chairman, who's running for governor, a Republican, who is kind of steering more of a middle course. As we were joking in kind of the green room a second ago, you know, what's in the middle of the road, roadkill. But we're going to find out if that's true or not.
Yeah. All right. Nancy, this week the Hollywood City Commission, after a tortured kind of discussion, hours and hours and hours, which is part of the democratic process, but they finally voted that the names of these 3 streets named after Confederate generals is going to have to come down, but it wasn't easy getting there.
It wasn't easy getting there. It should have been easier getting there, and we need to move on from this. I really think that this issue just took up too much airtime, too much space for a progressive city such as Hollywood.
Yeah, it is a progressive city.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, one of the arguments I heard as this whole tortured process was playing out was that why are we focused so much on signs and names when the truly big issues, institutional issues about racism and discrimination have yet to be fixed? Do you see, are these important? Are street signs, are names, are they important?
Look, I can see why someone who lives on the street that's named after the founder of the KKK might be upset. And so I don't have an issue with that. Right. But what I do think, though, it is a waste. In a certain sense, it's a waste of good thought about how we get, how we increase economic opportunity, how we increase educational achievement in areas where desperately need those things. Those are questions. We should be talking more about how we get through immigration, how we fix the dreamer issue. Those are the kinds of things we should spend more time. 200 people showed up and kept the Hollywood City Commission there till 2 in the morning over 3 street signs.
Fine though, but let's not let the perfect become the enemy of the good. And you know what? I'm happy people are talking about the Civil War. We're talking about history instead of Dancing with the Stars.
That's true.
Don't fool ourselves.
I'm sorry, I still hear people
It's a teaching moment in a certain sense.
Or the Bachelorette.
You're right.
All right, listen, if I may.
Wait, don't just the Bachelorette, Mike.
Before we run out of time, I just want to take a second to acknowledge that this week a friend of mine, a friend of the community, Sergio Pereira, died. He was the Miami City manager, Miami-Dade County manager, a fabulous guy, a fine administrator, and I miss him. So thank you all for coming in. Great roundtable.
Thank you.
So to come, my personal perspective on the fate of the Dreamers. Before we leave you this morning, some thoughts about Dreamers. The president is going to announce on Tuesday whether they can stay or have to go. They should stay. But I'm afraid President Trump, to shore up his base, is going to say, oh, I love them, but they've got to go. He'll try to soften it, I guess, the blow by saying that he will phase out DACA over the course of maybe 2 years. That would only prolong the insult and the pain. The president's decision is going to have a big impact here in South Florida. About 33,000 Dreamers live in South Florida. The overwhelming majority are productive members of society, students, workers, taxpayers, husbands, wives, parents, homeowners. They make our community a much better place. Monica Lazaro is one of our Dreamers. In fact, she could be the poster girl for everything that is right about Dreamers. Monica was born in Honduras and brought to Miami when she was 9.
I am the Miami girl, you just grow up here, you do elementary, middle school, high school, and college, so I'm as Miami as it can get.
Monica graduated this spring from FIU with a degree in biological sciences. Now she is working as a research assistant at Nova. She wants to go on to Boston and get a master's degree and live a normal American life. I think she has earned that right, but she stands to be deported if DACA is revoked. I wish President Trump could meet Monica. I wish Paul Ryan could meet Monica. She is precisely the kind of immigrant who makes America great right now. When Congress goes back to work this week, their first order of business will be taking care of the tragedy in Houston and the other parts of Texas. The next thing that they should do is pass a bill giving legal status to Dreamers and a path of citizenship. Bills to do that are already in the hopper. The president says he loves Dreamers. Okay, Mr. President, show us you mean it. Let them stay and let Congress make them permanent. That is my perspective. Hope you have a wonderful holiday weekend and that Irma passes us by. Remember, as always, stay informed, get involved.
Speaking of Irma, we are watching that hurricane at Category 3 closely. Please do stay tuned. We will have updates as you prepare for what may come for us this week. Meanwhile, all of the addresses on your screen are where you can reach us, and we'd love to hear from you, so please do keep in touch.
Have a great Sunday.